Hello, everyone. I hope you have a fantastic day and good night, good day, or good morning, depends where you are. Welcome to BioVerse webinar, episode 15, Mergers and Acquisition, the Ultimate Exit of Biotechs. Today is my great pleasure to have such a renowned and experienced experts on our panel, both from the sell side, buy side, investor, and advisory firm together to share, probably one of the most, if not the most interesting topic in global biotech universe, which is M&A, which is tie the interest of the founder, the investor, and big pharma together. Before we dive into today's topic, for people who are dialing in BioVerse the first time, I would like to introduce a little bit who we are and also introduce a panelist today. I will share my screen. So Laura, my co-host, please give me a thumb up if you can see my screen. Fantastic. All right, let's get started. Let's do not, beat the bush and waste the time. Today we're talking about M&A, the ultimate exit of a biotech. Before we get started, let's introduce a little bit of who we are, BioVerse. We're science sparks business in medicines. It's really co-produced by 3 leading nonprofit in the United States. The first one is where I sit, InScienceWeTrust community, where Nora also is a volunteer. We are an Asian biotech focused nonprofit with more than 2,000 active members, have a multiple platform, really global organization. The second one is the Sino-America Pharmaceutical Professionals Associations, Great Philly chapter, SAPA-GP, which is one of the longest, if not the longest, ethnic Chinese American focused nonprofit in biopharma industry. And this is our Philly chapter with thousands of members and almost 30 years of history. The last, but definitely not least, BioSpark, which is a biotech-focused nonprofit with a strong presence of members in Boston area, but also have members around the world. They aim to bring innovation from the bench side all the way to the bedside. Obviously, BioVerse, we have continuously brought in more than, I would say, 15,000 live attendees. So welcome to be one of the, probably today going to be 15,000, even more attendees. The reason we could achieve such an impressive attendance of audience because we have a small army of collaborators, a lot of them based in Asia, some of them in the leading business school in the US as well, as you can see here on the left. And last but definitely not the least, BioVerse right now have a YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, search for BioVerse-ISWTC, you will find us and you can watch all the recording, which actually were edited to make it a little bit easier of all our previous episodes. So as you can see here, and including today, we're gonna have 15 videos over there. Gonna be very helpful if you want to understand the global biotech, especially from the lens of an Asian biotech perspective. With that being said, let's dive into today's panel discussion. First, I would like to invite the speakers to make a brief introduction of yourself. I'll start with Rachel. Rachel, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Strick. I work at AbbVie, where I lead about half of our transactional efforts, business development and acquisitions for therapeutic areas, including immunology, specialty, eye care, and platform technologies. My background is originally consulting, and then after that, I actually joined what was Abbott at the time in commercial, so sales and marketing, then moved into working on the separation, the spin out between Abbott and AbbVie, post-merger integration, and decided the strategic M&A and collaboration function was really where I wanted to make my home. So been there ever since.
Fantastic. So Dandan, first of all, thank you, Dandan. I know finally it's 6 o'clock over your time in California. Really appreciate that. Please introduce yourself.
No worries, early birds. So, hello everyone. I'm Dandan. I'm the venture partner of TCGX. TCGX is a biotech-focused capital firm. We are managing $1.8 billion US, investing biotech companies cross different stage from the private to crossover, IPO, and PIPE. So I'm leading the effort of venture formation. I started this role a couple of months ago. Before that, I was the CBO of Arriven Biopharma. Arriven is a biotech company listed in NASDAQ, which I incubated back in 2021, where we acquired an asset from a Chinese company called Alist Biopharma, and the asset is currently under global phase 3 development. Before that, I was an investor also in the biotech industry for more than a decade, starting from 2008, working in a venture capital firm in the United States and also oversee Greater China investment, and also co-founded a few companies there. Nice meeting everyone.
Fantastic. Lihua?
Thank you, Leo. My name is Lihua Zheng. I'm currently co-founder and CEO of Therapeutics. This is a new company I co-founded a few months ago, focusing on developing next generation immuno-oncology therapeutics. Previously, I co-founded and was the CBO and Chief Strategy Officer of Therapeutics, which was founded 2018, 5-6 years ago. And we developed a few drugs licensed in from Daiichi Sankyo. And for that company, we raised $100 million venture financings, and also did a few partnership deals. And early this year, it was merged into a New Vision Bio. And now I am trying to start a new efforts. Before that, I spent 10 years in legal practice in New York City, and before that, another 10 years in bench work in different labs in the US and China as well. Good to see everyone.
Fantastic. So we have someone just finish acquisition, share some views. So Tess, definitely not last, definitely not the least. Please, a few words about yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And Leon and Nora, thank you so much for having me. So Tess Cameron, I'm a principal at RA Capital, a member of our investment team. And, RA Capital is a $12 billion fund. We invest in life sciences companies, and we invest across all stages. So we partner with entrepreneurs to help build companies. We work with, late stage companies. We invest in, companies both private and on the public markets, really driven by the desire to source best in class technologies, and I've had the very good fortune of partnering and working with several companies based in China that have done phenomenal work. So really pleased to be a part of this discussion.
Fantastic. So now let's, I would invite my co-host Laura, a few words about yourself in case the people just dive in the first time.
Sure, Leon. So I'm Nora Luo. I'm an IP attorney from Zheng State, and it's a great honor to co-host the webinar today on this very exciting topic.
All right. Finally, definitely the least, the last definitely least. My name is Leon Tang. I'm the founder of the InScienceWeTrust community and also the founder of a BioVerse webinar series. I also run my small BD consulting firm called InScienceWeTrust BioAdvisory. That's all about myself. Let's dive into today's topic. First, let's set a little bit stage. The first question, is really to Tess. And, you have been following the M&A. I saw a lot of great reports you have written from RA Capital and about this industry. I know also you have like some quick summary about this industry. Could you give us a little bit kind of a 10,000 view of the current M&A status in our industry, as well as a little bit longitudinal view? I know I have you one slide. I'm going to show that right now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so what this slide is really talking about seasonality, but maybe I'll just step back and talk more broadly about M&A trends in our sector. I mean, I think M&A trends in our sector are fundamentally driven by the need to continue innovating, right? Like that's what our patent system and now things like the Inflation Reduction Act really, really force is the continued focus on innovation and, bringing great drugs to market. And it's hard for pharmas to like find those all by themselves, right? Especially, when they need to be focused on maintaining a P&L profile and EPS profile that, their investors are, comfortable with. I think what we've seen over the past several years is as the, and we'll talk a little bit more about, politics, I'm sure, because it's hard not to these days. But with the Federal, Trade Commission taking a much stricter view on really large M&A, right? And, really, investigating and, discouraging a lot of larger deals. They've, even discouraged many smaller deals, but I think, certainly many larger deals. What that's meant over the past couple of years is there has been more of a focus by pharma on these, tuck-in deals, and, particularly for, assets that have compelling proof of concept data. So I see that as very much a trend that is, I see that as very much a trend that is going to continue. And one that's just a key part of our sector is having these innovation cycles where pharma ultimately is looking for innovation in many places, their own R&D, but they will always be looking externally for best-in-class technology. A question that we've had a lot this year from our investors, our limited partners, is this question of seasonality, right? And I think that, I think that Rachel is going to share some statistics on M&A more broadly in 2024. But, looking at certain metrics, for 2024, it looks, it looks a bit lower in terms of deal value, at least for, smaller biotech deals, than 2023. And so a question that we've had is like, what does that mean? Does that mean that like, M&A is slowing down? And the answer is we don't really know, because it turns out that Q4 is a really, really important part of, M&A in our sector. And so what this slide shows is it shows the deal value of acquisitions, and it shows the deal value of acquisitions as broken down by quarter. So in the top slide, you see the percent of deal value, and this is just for deals of, smaller companies, right? So this is acquisitions that are like under 50 billion, right? So this is, excluding, deals like BMS, Celgene, and other things like that were really mega deals. So of those transactions, we tend to see that about 40% on average over the past several years have been announced in Q4. And that is true across both public and private, right? So we break that down on the bottom slide. So this may be something that Rachel has more insights into than me, in terms of why that actually happens. But it's certainly, a trend that we see. So it makes it, hard to call, what deal value is really going to look like until we have, seen the full year. But, just to share some metrics, when we looked at this, deal value activity through the month of October, and this is just for the under $50 billion deals, we saw, total deal value that was about 45 billion or so. And, that was actually pretty in line with earlier years, right? 2023 was a bit of a, 2023 was a bit of a bump, over that, because there were a few larger deals in 2023. And I think, we included, Seagen in that. And when you take Seagen out, if we lower this threshold a little bit to more like 30 billion, the numbers actually look, pretty consistent over the past couple of years. So that was just one insight and one question that we've been getting that I wanted to share some perspectives on. Back to you, Leon.
Fantastic. I think you set a very good stage for like Rachel probably share more colors. So now my question to Rachel, already like Tess, cue you. There's other different observations you have seen. I also saw your slides. Now I'm gonna invite you to share your insights from the research you have been doing. So I will drive the next slides. Please take from here, Rachel.
Sure. So I think we don't need to spend time on this one. Maybe we'll just jump straight into the content. I agree completely with Tess that we've seen 2023 was a massive year, right, on a lot of dimensions, right, both volume and dollar amount. So it's a little bit of an outlier if you're really just comparing from one year to the next, right? It helps to take that slightly longer view. I really hope that seasonality holds true, right, before the end of 2024. Because we are tracking behind this year, and we have seen, not just no deals that are above the 50 billion threshold that Tess used, but no deals above 5, right? So we're really deep in that tuck-in space where, whatever you can choose the motivation, right? For every buyer, it's going to be somewhat different, right? It might be the cost of capital. It might be the willingness of their particular targets to talk to them. It might be the urgency that the targets feel or don't feel about, putting themselves actively on the block, right? And then to the extent that you're always thinking as a buyer about, do I want to buy this and when do I want to buy this, right? What is the right time? Do I wait for the card flip on the data, or do I try to essentially get a discount by moving ahead of the card flip on the data? All of that plays into what is the size of the deal and when are you going to try to actually execute that deal. So I have no crystal ball that will tell me, right, what the fourth quarter of this year looks like. But as a deal person, I love the space, and I want not just us, but everybody to be super active, because that's the best thing for our ecosystem to continue to grow. So I hope we get our Q4 bump.
So Rachel, please continue. Let's move to the next slide.
Sure. So one of the things that we spend some time thinking about is what are the kinds of deals that are going to be needle moving, right? And what kinds of technologies are moving the market? I think in particular, if you look at the USA, there have been a lot of questions about what the Inflation Reduction Act will do to the market. And we have lots and lots of small biotechs that come to us and say, AbbVie, are you still doing deals in small molecules? Because the IRA has a really short time threshold for small molecules on the market, right? And biologics get, as of now, a 4-year longer runway. And I would like to say to everyone who is out there in the small molecule space, do not be alarmed. This is still a really, really important place for drug development. We still see deals here, right? It's almost half of, the deal, well, 40% of the deals that are being done there are still in M&A. It's huge, right? Compared to, some of the other spaces that we look at. There's no chilling effect on small molecules. Keep going. We still want to do this work. Cell therapy gets a lot of buzz, right? And there are deals in this space. I think there are selected buyers here and selected collaborators, some who are very much, we're in, and some who are toe in the water. ADCs, I think this is an area of growth, right, from the deal space. And we've seen a couple of really large, M&A and also collaborations here. And then the multi-specifics are getting a little bit of traction additionally as well. And your traditional antibodies, as AbbVie, I always have to make a plug for monoclonal antibodies. We love them. We consider ourselves among the best in the business there, and they're not going away anytime soon. So, I think what the modalities are all still really essential to advancing the science and drugs for patients. And there's still a space for deals in all of these modalities. The best thing.
Sorry, please go ahead. I just wanted
please,
to.
well, I go ahead and then I'll.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make, because I'm just curious about the small molecules point, because I think what we see on the investor side is we see companies, really being thoughtful about like indication selection and indication expansion and how to manage multiple indications and maybe doing that in different ways than they have in the past. So, I was, interested and thought that might be helpful for any, people who are at small molecule companies in the audience, if you could maybe speak to that just for a minute. But I think that's one way where companies can be really smart about their strategy and demonstrate to a strategic, hey, if it is a small molecule for a Medicare population, you've really been thoughtful about a plan that can help preserve runway through orphan exemptions or other ways to really maximize the life of that asset. So just thought it might be interesting for some folks to hear additional color on that.
Yeah. Oh, that's an excellent point. I'm curious, Tess, as to whether you would give the same advice we would in terms of being thoughtful. Traditionally, you've seen biotechs look for proof of concept in a smaller, easier to enroll indication and say, well, we'll do a trial in lupus nephritis and see if the drug works. And then we'll let the big pharma do SLE. And that's much more expensive. It will take longer. And you eat into your clock, right? When you're thinking about a launch and a small indication and a longer one. So we have been working with some of our partners and prospective partners on being more thoughtful and potentially more aggressive about investment, right? In some of those areas so that you are maximizing those early years on the market before you're hit on the other side. Is that similar to the way you've been thinking with your portfolio teams?
Yes, it is certainly similar. And, one way that we've seen, companies manage this effectively, which is it unfortunately creates some redundancy, but, if you have a, backup molecule that you're working on, right? Where you think, hey, maybe there's some ways that this backup might, even be like an improved, molecule, you could maybe take your lead forward in the, smaller indication where you can get proof of concept, and then you have the backup that is maybe, an improved, molecule that you could advance in larger patient populations. So a bit of a different strategy, Rachel, as you shared, than what is typical, but it sounds like we're, encouraging, companies, all encouraging companies to be really thoughtful about these paths in light of, legislation.
I think the other point that I wanted to make, and I'm curious if other folks have additional thoughts, is if what a company is driving for is M&A as opposed to a collaboration or a single asset or program purchase of an asset and a backup, one of the things that makes M&A potentially more appealing in today's universe, where you're looking at potentially shorter lifetimes for individual assets, is the idea of a functional platform that reliably over time generates new assets into the pipeline. For us, that brings potential significant incremental value to an M&A. It's one thing to buy an asset, that's great, that gives you time with that asset, you can maximize its value to the patients and to the market. But if what you're getting is an asset and behind it a well-validated platform, then you really hopefully are building an engine for future growth.
Very good point. Yeah, shall we move to the next slide, Rachel?
Sure. So Leon, the slide that I have here, I think was for one of your subsequent questions that we had talked through. I don't know if you want to jump ahead in and have me talk, or if you want to tee up why we had put this slide together.
I think you can go ahead. I think all the other panelists, if you have any comments, please feel free to chime in. I think what Tess did is fantastic. Really enjoy your interaction.
Great. Okay, so Leon, you had prepped us with this intriguing question of are companies bought or are companies sold, right? And there's a large school of thought that says companies are bought rather than being sold. And I'm I don't know whether I fully agree with it, but as someone on the buy side, we like to think that we drive a lot of this, but certainly we are driven by our own business needs, right? And to Tess's introductory point of it's not possible to grow organically at the scale that the largest pharmas need to grow. We have to seek inorganic growth, and we will always turn to outside sources for whatever innovation we haven't fully satisfied with our internal pipelines. And so what you can think about when you look at, right, companies here is we are driven by the growth expectations of our investors. We have to continue to feed our own engine as we grow in our pipeline assets, as we grow in our sales on market. We create essentially a bigger and bigger base upon which we need to generate incremental growth. It's essentially your own internal ratchet effect, right? All of this is going to be complicated by loss of exclusivity, right, on assets that we have because they don't grow in perpetuity. Complicated by the IRA that we were just talking about. Some of us have worked really hard over the last few years to diversify our pipelines and our sales bases, right? AbbVie's the poster child of, we used to be heavily concentrated in Humira, and we have worked incredibly hard. We do have 2 massive immunology programs now, but they don't account for as much of our sales proportionately as Humira once did because we've really worked on growing and diversifying the rest of the business. There are other companies who, as they grow now, and you look specifically at places like obesity, where they're going to have huge concentration effects and they're going to be looking to fill future gaps. And then, of course, strength of mid to late stage pipeline. We work in a risky business, right? You do everything you can to drive risk out of your own internal pipeline, to do as much diligence as you can on a deal ahead of time. Again, I talk about AbbVie a lot. It's impossible to drive all risk out of what we do, right? We had data that surprised us that we just released earlier this week. It's no knock on the diligence team. You have to run the experiments, right? That's literally the business we're in. You can get a really good probability of success, but you could end up on the wrong side of that card flip at any time, right? So we have to keep going, and you have to keep going with multiple shots on goal, right? And keep running the experiments and keep trying to strengthen and build that pipeline over time to feed that growth.
Yeah, now I would like to invite probably Dandan and Lihua, if you have any thoughts regarding all the topic we have covered so far, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I think Cassie and Rachel covered the landscape really well, and I think let's look forward to the Q4 because that's really important based on last year's experience. It's like critical, and maybe it will, change the whole picture. Like we're looking forward to see more and more activities in the sector, and everybody, I think, in the buy side or on the sell side, it's like working super hard toward the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just one thing to share, and one reason that I think this chart is so awesome, Rachel, is that you can look at this chart and it helps also explain the different types of deals that companies do, right? I mean, we look at Pfizer on this chart and it helps explain why they were doing, why the Seagen deal, why did they, acquire several companies, in 2022, that was like a number of commercial stage companies. That was really because they're, seeking to boost that revenue growth and, on the lower side of that. I think we've seen, Lilly and Novo take much bigger kind of like earlier stage, big idea, earlier stage, companies that are maybe building on existing franchises that they have, or, new modalities and things that are further out. So I think this is a great this tells a great story on the types of M&A that some of these companies are focused on as well.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, I want to just add one point. I just came back from China, spent 2 weeks there, and talking to some venture capital funds or some company side, they were looking at like potential M&A deals as a some kind of hope or optimism there because of the challenging capital market or overall like a funding situation there. So I mean, it's glad to see more M&A activities there, and hopefully we'll see more in the fourth quarter as the trend says that. So I think that can give a lot of motivation there, and also some hope if we see more M&A activity for those companies struggling with the financing situation.
Actually, I have one more question for the panel. One thing is looking at this from a finance or like a corporate development point of view, especially from the lens of a big pharma. A lot of biotech in the audience today, actually, they are probably kind of very specific disease area modality focus. Can you please comment a little bit which disease area, which kind of modality you think gonna be really like attract a lot of attention, or big pharma really pay a lot of attention? We talk about a small molecule, right? Can we also from another dimension in terms of disease area, modality, or M&A point of view? Anyone could share any insights?
I think maybe one to add on is just the excitement that we've seen for ADCs and bispecifics, and coming back to Lihua's point, we've seen some really exciting deals for companies in China that have developed really really great programs and have great pipelines in this area, including the BioVerse deal that we saw this morning, but also several others. So I think that I'm sure Rachel and Lihua and Dandan have thoughts on this as well. But I think there's increasing interest in just that modality and the potential breadth of that modality.
So my feeling in general is it's really hard to predict which modality will be the hottest area, because I think regardless which modality you're working on, the ultimate goal is really to meet the unmet medical need by different approach. So I think maybe different pharmas actually has a different preference on modality, but fundamentally, I think the factors will boost a sector will be, for example, validate the commercial opportunity or new commercial opportunity, which will like significant, or proof concept on something. I think Tess mentioned today there is a new M&A transaction, which is based on new proof concept data generated in the past year or so by specific molecules. So I think those are two fundamental factors I think would driven the potential M&A opportunity. In terms of a modality, it's I would say, at least from investment perspective, we're pretty agnostic.
Yeah. I think the indication question is going to be really specific to every buyer. What's a strategic fit? I think everyone would love to know what the next obesity market is, right? What is an underserved market that people don't know is underserved, where you might be able to truly change the patient experience and then get reimbursement for it, right? So everybody's going to have a theory. I hope many people are right for the sake of patients who've been sitting in places that haven't had big changes to standard of care in the last couple of decades. But I do think it's going to have to be something really specific based on the individual buyer. We do see trends in investments from our venture capital friends, right? And we see things get hot in the IPO markets. I've been working in immunology for a while, right? It was a desert. And then all of a sudden it got really hot and there were lots and lots of opportunities, not all of equal quality, right? It's great to have an ADC. It's great to have a multi-specific, but what about that combination, right, in that modality is rational, what gets you an incremental benefit? Have you put them together just because they're both previously clinically validated and you think that there might be some activity there? Or have you put it together because together they're going to transform what patients would otherwise be able to access, right? And so I think it's really about being thoughtful and really about the value proposition for any given platform or any given asset. And then does the data make it look like it could be compelling in that indication for that buyer?
Fantastic. So I guess this is your last slide, right, Rachel?
Yes. And this is my optimistic slide, right? To Tess's point in everyone's conversation of Dandan's hope that we're going to increase M&A, right? And maybe if it's not in Q4, maybe it's as we're looking forward, right, to coming years. There's a lot of firepower out there, right? You're looking at a lot of companies, right, with a fair amount of cash. Debt capacity, right? Where you're saying, a lot of these companies have very little leverage. Some of them have more appetite for leverage. Some of our big pharmas have historically been less willing to assume debt. AbbVie in particular, we experimented with Allergan with taking on a fair amount, worked out really well for us. So we're not going to be shy. Others may have slightly different attitudes, but there's a ton of dry powder out there for acquisitions. So if the environment is right, if the targets are matched to the buyers, there is the potential that we won't see any continued shortage of M&A transactions at any scale.
Fantastic. So I guess now we can move to the second part where my co-host Laura going to take lead. Before I pass the baton to her, I want to do a quick housekeeping. For the audience, if you have questions, please only put them in the Q&A box in the webinar so all the panelists can see it. And also, due to, obviously there's some compliance issue, we will not take anonymous questions. We don't know who you are, so we will not take your question if you are anonymous. Please identify your name and your affiliation. With that being said, Laura, floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Leon. So after hearing everyone's great insights on MA stats and trends, we have some specific questions for each speaker. And we will start with the buyer side. So Rachel, as someone who has been instrumental for many transactions AbbVie has done in recent years, could you share some recent MA transaction experiences as a buyer and tell us the key factors that influence the decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nora. Thank you. I think for AbbVie, it is always science first, right? What is the data that would lead us to believe that there is something differentiating about this opportunity? Does the science tell us that this meets an unmet need for a patient population that we care deeply about? And then once we have that as our table stakes, right, to get us curious and interested, then we do the deep dive, right? And all of the diligence involved. I think particularly when you're thinking about large public M&A, this is almost always driven by something that is in the public domain first. We do an outside-in analysis. It's always ideal as a buyer to have your perspective before you or one of your potential competitive bidders triggers a process, right? Private companies, you maybe have a little bit more latitude. You do have to be careful with the way you speak to management or board members so that you're not triggering their fiduciary duties and putting them in a bind. But you can have a little bit more conversation and get much deeper confidentially before you're really triggering anything. But we always start with the science, and then we start to build up what is the business case around the science? What could an opportunity look like in our hands as a buyer, right? Because you're making the case not just for what is the value of this particular company, but what is the value of this company should it be in our hands? And the real magic of making M&A valuations work is to say, if we are the owner of this asset, this platform, this company, then we can expand its value, and we can expand the patients that are reached and the indications that are served by this asset or by this platform. And that, I think, is really the sweet spot that as a buyer you want to drive to in all of your strategic M&A transactions.
Thank you, Rachel. So I believe many potential sellers in the audience would much appreciate the insights you shared. So Dandan, I know that you have a hard stop at 10 o'clock. So let me ask you next. Dandan, we know that you have had multiple roles. You are a venture investor from TCG Crossover, and you have also co-founded several cross-border companies. So how do you assess whether a company is ready for MA as an exit strategy?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question to answer. I think I think Rachel and Tess both mentioned about something relevant to this. Like, for example, like the buyer might need you to have a proof of concept data. But I would say, and to my portfolio, also the founders of the biotech companies, I would say prepare for it anytime, but not only focus on it, because you cannot predict it. So I think you have to focus. But for me, maybe, my job is really to incubating companies and making early stage private investment. So my portfolio is relevant in an earlier stage compared with the later stage biotech companies. But what I always talk with the founders is first of all, you have to believe M&A is an exit strategy. You have to agree with that, but you cannot exclude that. Everybody seems easily agree on that. But secondly, I think the $1 million question is when. And I think nobody can actually predict that, but you can actually basically control what are you doing, right? So I think the fundamental, still back to the fundamental, I think, are you fully prepared that the technology platform or the asset are developing really create value? I think the piece of innovation is really something driven. The factor actually driven this M&A activities. If you look at the M&As, I would say nowadays you see more and more best-in-class molecules, but still historically and even nowadays, I think a lot of buyers are still focused on the first-in-class molecules. So I think the piece of innovation and the fundamental differentiation will be the key factor. So I would say anytime prepare for it, but do not waste your resource. If you think, I think you need to talk with the board and assess the stage of the molecule, and the board sometimes it's very helpful to help you to assess whether you will have the next catalyst or next inflection point. So if you look at the totality of the asset stage and when you can create value and what the timing for them be. So M&A, that will be you have to look at the totality of the package. I do have some experience, which is good or bad, like a biotech founder sold the company for about 200 million. That is actually just a few years back. And I think that asset is generating probably 5 to 10 billion peak sales in the end after a few years of development. So I think a lot of times at this moment, the board will really should be functional, give guidance to the funders and to basically assess if this is the right timing for you to do the deal. But I think for most of the I would say biotech companies, I think it would be really great if you already have a deal in place, right? That's really, I think it's a really hard question to answer by the founder and the board when you should actually really, trigger a transaction. But I would say back to the fundamental, do not set a goal I have to be acquired one day or today or tomorrow. That will be really frustrating. But really allocate your resource, your money, and your energy, focus on create value to the molecule and to the platform.
Thank you, Dandan. So I think we heard from both you and Rachel. So basically, science and innovation are critical elements to success. Those are excellent perspectives. So let me next turn to Lihua, a successful seller. So we know that you co-founded Therapeutics, which was merged earlier this year into the public company Nuvation Bio. So could you share some insights on how a biotech company might, develop and execute a strategy like this? What challenges can there be, and how to resolve them to close the deal?
Second, Nora, yeah, I cannot comment on specific deal, but overall, I can share some general observations. As Rachel and Dandan already shared, I think very, very helpful insights as a buyer and a seller, right? So, but on the operation side, I totally agree or echo what Dandan said. You cannot really anchor M&A deal as a company or as a management. So we, as a management, I think it's very, very helpful to have all the optionalities on the table to explore all the different paths. I think there besides focusing on science and for creating value and generate exciting data, I think it's always helpful to talk to people and to expand your outreach to either the buyers or the bankers or anyone, the investigators even. So I think in our experience, it's so important to have all the people who believe in your asset to really help you out. And I think one of the deals we did it really depends on the investigator, one of the doctors in our trial, who made the introduction. So he just believed in this asset, and he introduced us to a buyer, and immediately the buyer will buy in to the story, and that makes the transaction so much quicker and smooth. So it's not like it's only one way, or I think we have to explore all the different options as management. So the other part, I think the management probably has to be ready for any kind of talk, right? So M&A is only the ultimate exit, like Leon said, but sometimes really it starts with license, like a talk, right? So because that's easier conversation to start with before a buyer has a better or deep understanding of the science. So I think it's really, really important to give these opportunities, right? To even if it's a licensed talk, and just be fully corporate and get your database ready when they want to access your data room. So that's I think that the second advice. And I think the third one, it's maybe get your board and investors aligned. And sometimes like Dandan said, right? There's a deal, like 200 million deal, but later on it can be multi-billion dollars. So so timing can be important, and whether it's a good time or not, you have to get the stakeholders aligned. And the timing and the value, the expectation there aligned as well. So I guess the buyer would like to see those as well, because if there's a disagreement among all stakeholders, it's a waste of time for buyers and licensees as well. So that's my few points.
Yep. Thank you, Lihua.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, sure.
Just because I think, Lihua, your point about licensing conversations being easier first, whether it ends up being a licensing transaction or it ends up being an M&A, is a good one. And I think the other piece of that is comfort with the management team. It gives the buyer an opportunity to really get to know you, right? And to build that trust and to build that confidence and to get a deeper understanding of the business as a whole, potentially, and what the management team looks like and how they bring value also to the programs. I know, when I started in this function, there was a lot of, you buy the company and you send the management team on their way and you think you know best, right? And that is really not the way we like to do business now. You want to keep as many of the people who are deep in that program as possible, right? For the continuity, to accelerate what you're doing, right? And to make sure that you're preserving and growing the value. And so those conversations are hugely important. I think that's a really good point.
Excellent, excellent, Rachel. Yeah, that's very important. The people aspect is also really, really important. Communication and how you build up the trust and show how the management does the work, right? So the way the communication, how the management communicates and the content the management communicates also really matters to build the trust. And trust is everything in the deal besides the science. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I'll add another point is really lesson learned from also a case where when there is a new indication and everybody is doing this commercial assessment and sales projection, I think you should be really, really, careful and have a fair commercial opportunity evaluation assessment. Just like the case I mentioned before, the acquisition, at the acquisition, the peak sales of the molecule was estimated like 300 million to 500 million, similar to an orphan indication, orphan disease peak sales. But in the end, the product is already launched, and nowadays people are expecting like more than 5 billion annual revenue from that molecule. So I think there is a significant gap on the valuation because of this like market assessment, the commercial opportunity assessment actually give the original founders the wrong number. But I think as a biotech's founder, just like Lihua said, you are in the front line working with the physicians and working with on the molecule. You should have the best assessment and best estimate on the commercial opportunity. I think that's something just put into your checkbox. I think is pretty important, and also leverage the resource from your board who maybe have more experience on that side to help you to make the decision.
Okay, those are all great points. We appreciate the real world suggestions based on firsthand transaction experience from everyone. So thank you, Lihua, Rachel, and Dandan. Last but not least, let me ask Tess, another successful investor on this panel, who also serves on several company boards. So we know that your firm, RA Capital, co-founded Mariana Oncology, which entered into an MA agreement with Novartis earlier this year. Could you share some insights from the story that others can learn from?
Yeah, and I won't go into any, specifics on the, too many specifics on the deal, but I think Mariana, and actually we had the great pleasure of working with Rachel's team on another, RA founded company, Aliada, that AbbVie recently acquired. And, I think the lesson, from both of those, and I see there's a question in the chat just about public companies versus private companies, and how should you think maybe as a public company, would your valuation necessarily be different as a public company? If you were to get acquired, I think it really doesn't matter. I think that the thing that really drives, strategic interest and ultimate valuation is the value of what you're working on, and that is reflected in, competition for a deal, right? And that is ultimately what, really what really determines, the valuation of that deal is, how in demand is that asset or technology. So, I'd really encourage companies to, solve for the right financing structure for your company based on what you want to accomplish, for your pipeline, rather than, necessarily how you're thinking about setting up the company for a potential partnership or acquisition in the future. But yeah, I think both for Mariana and Aliada, which my colleagues Josh and Laura were the leads on both of those companies. What they show, I think, is the importance of platform technologies that have found great applications. So, I think there were some other questions in the chat about, platform companies and, how those are valued. Rachel, spoke to that earlier as well. And both of those companies had, great platforms, Mariana in radiopharmaceuticals, Aliada in blood-brain barrier technologies. Those can be applied across a range of diseases, right? But, both companies, in addition to their platforms, had compelling lead programs that were earlier stage, but programs that kind of help give an idea of where the technologies can really be applied and how they can help serve an unmet need. So I think that's always really important for the members of this audience who are who founded or work for platform companies, is think about the applications and where your platform can really uniquely bring a differentiated outcome to a disease that has unmet need.
Thank you for sharing the insights and lessons, Tess. Those are great points. So finally, before we take questions from the audience, we would like each speaker to make a prediction for the MA market in the biopharma industry for next year, especially as we are now approaching 2025. So who wants to start first? Tess, do you want to start first? I know you may have something to say in view of the recent election results.
Yeah, I think, I mean, look, we'll see. I think the themes that we've talked about on this panel are all going to continue. We're seeing a lot of, I think we're seeing a lot of companies that are working on really awesome programs. Pharma is going to continue to want to fill their pipeline. So those those trends will continue. Maybe just to frame up, what are some of the questions that we are uncertain about, because we I don't think we can really predict anything with regards to what the political priorities are necessarily what's going to be put in place in 2025. But I think questions that will certainly inform the landscape. One is, what will the FTC look like? And I think many people are forecasting that there will be a more lenient FTC. Not so sure, right? But that's one area that we'll clearly be watching, and we'll have a better understanding of that, I'm sure, over the next few months. I think a second one that is a question is, what is the regulatory landscape going to look like? And are there going to be changes in the FDA or HHS or anything that just makes the regulatory path, introduces regulatory uncertainty or introduces uncertainty with regards to reimbursement? So that's a second area that I think we'll all be watching very closely. And then a third is, will there be policy changes? Will there be changes to the Inflation Reduction Act? Will there be anything related to, pricing drugs relative to, ex-US drugs, which has previously being floated as a proposal. These are all possibilities. I would hope that the new administration would recognize the value that medicines bring, in particular by being a something that goes generic, right? Hospital spend does not go generic. Healthcare services spend doesn't go generic, but medicines do, and that means that they're expensive for a while and then they are cheap, forever after. So I would hope that that is recognized and reflected in any policy changes that we see, but who knows? So I'll maybe stop there. Wish I had more answers. I'm sure all of us do, but those will be a few areas that we'll certainly be watching closely.
So before other panelists chime in, I have a quick, interjection. If you could also comment a little bit, what's your view in the future? China outbound deal, either BD or M&A, that would be great. This morning we have great news, right? So BioNTech acquired a Chinese company, and this year have quite a few M&A, right? Like Zimet, Profang, Merck, Curang, GSK, Cameron, quite a few. But would this continue? I mean, just keep that in mind. I think the audience, a lot of them either are running China-based company or are very interested in working with a China-based company. So I think that'll be very, very appreciated. So back to you, Laura.
Yeah, I like to cue Dandan first because I know you have probably 1 minute.
Yeah,
before
I'm
we-
sorry. So yeah, I would say the answer is positive. So here in TCGX, I'm leading the effort to actually focus a lot on the cross-border. So I think in general, the discovery and engineering engine in China is super powerful. There are tons of preclinical candidates, mostly I think preclinical candidates. So really generated. I just received the email from a Chinese company, and it has the 20 ADCs in their pipeline. So it's really amazed by the deal, like the flow of the molecules out there. And also, I think the quality, I think, I incubated Arrivin 3 years ago. I think nowadays, if you look at the quality of the Chinese asset compared with a few years ago, it's definitely much more improved, and it has a solid platform. A lot of times, actually, people are pretty sophisticated on generating best-in-class molecules. So I would say I'll be staying pretty positive on the potential M&A from China. But okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dandan.
I'm sorry, I have to excuse myself. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dandan.
Everybody, and Leon and Nora, thank you for inviting me here. Bye.
Okay, so Lihua and Rachel, do you have a few words to share as well?
Yeah, well, I echo Dandan. I think so. Like I said, I spent the last 2 weeks in China and just firsthand experience talking to companies and founders and venture capital funds, local funds. I saw just so many innovations, and not only best in class. There are many companies working on first in class molecules, RNA, small RNAs, all the ADCs, next generation ADCs, the multi-specific antibodies. It's just everything, and just the scale and the depths of this innovation. It's just amazing. So I think it just takes time to really see those in the clinics, and M&A will come with it, I think, down the road. And there was one thing, one message I kept hearing is that for folks like working in the U.S. and China, have experience on both sides of the Pacific, they have a kind of view that $1 in China is probably equal to $10 in the U.S. in terms of R&D efficiency. So I think that's a kind of advantage for companies working in that space. And I think the big pharma saw that as well. As you saw the news, Roche and Pfizer are setting up R&D centers there, trying to take advantage of this advantage, like R&D side. So not only I think the M&A from the biotech side, I think the BioPharma also saw this and see those and try to take advantage of those as well. Yeah.
Speaking about
I think that's
BioPharma,
all
Rachel.
true. Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything Lihua said. We did a collaboration with a Chinese company out of our immunology team not too long ago, FutureGen TL1A antibody, and it gets to that best-in-class potential, right? Of how do you advance something that may be better than what is out there. We're actively building, some companies have R&D centers. We're actively building out a transactions team in China. We have a local affiliate that has handled a lot of work, but we actually have found that from a strategic perspective, we need more people there, right, to help sort through what are the golden opportunities and what may just be bronze or silver. So we're growing. Go look for the posting. Anybody who's interested, certainly on our site. We truly are growing our team there because I think there is so much opportunity in China.
Okay, so a big thank you to all of our fantastic speakers today. And next, we'll pick a few questions from the audience. So Leon, let me hand it over to you.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you all the panelists for the very insightful sharing today. So there's a lot of questions, and thank you, Tess. You already replied a bunch of them by typing. And I can probably pick a few for the interest of time. We will definitely want to finish in another probably 5 minutes at the most. So, I look at the questions, I'll pick probably the first one. This is from Ricardo and Boyer. Actually, I know him very well, not like in person, but he published a landmark paper, New England Journal of Medicine this year. The BCMA T-cell engager, from J&J, used that for B-cell driven autoimmune diseases. So from this, senior author, his question is really regarding the T-cell engager, primarily to Rachel. Actually, you just talk about I&I. Do you view assay pivot from oncology into autoimmune diseases differently than those precisely developed for autoimmune diseases, or does it depend exclusively on the property of individual molecules?
Yeah, so it really depends on the data in the molecules, right? I think the biggest difference between what people will tolerate in oncology development versus immunology development is safety, right? The bar is really different in the autoimmune indications. And if you're working with those patients, you need it to be, right, much safer and much less risky. I think there is some question of, are the targets all exactly the same, right? And certainly there are some scientific conversations to be had about whether all of them translate the same way. And in that regard, it really has to be, scientifically driven.
Fantastic. So just for a reminder for the audience who are not super familiar, T-cell engager, especially like a CD19, CD20, PSMA, targeted T-cell engager is really, really hot in terms of M&A this year. And we saw a lot of them actually out of China, including like we mentioned a little bit from Kura, Merck, Chemagin, and GSK. Recently, they even have a tri-specific T-cell engager, just for your reminder. That's why probably Ricardo asked this question, and he's one of the leading PI in this industry. So next question is actually from Sean Hu. I believe he's a CBO of a startup. It's really kind of questions about what's the current trends in terms of enterprise value for M&A deals this year, regarding premium or discounted multiples. I guess it's something probably Tess and Rachel have a very good idea.
I actually do not have the data off the top of my head for that one. I'm not sure, Rachel, if you do.
Yeah, I was just thinking I would have to look for
Yes.
it. There's so many variables, right, that go into premia. You're really going to be driven by, was it a competitive process? what phase is the asset in, right? And I think, you know, is the company appropriately valued, right, by the public market at the time? There's a lot of noise in those analyses, but certainly there are stats out there. You know, typically the big investment banks will do their status of the M&A market. We can go and look it up, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
The next question, kind of similar. This is from Peter Luo, who is a founder and CEO of Adagene, which is a NASDAQ listed public company. And his question, very similar, is what is the M&A premium for public versus a private company? My understanding, public, I saw the data is around 75 to 80% of the last 7-day trading. That's what I saw, but a private company, I have no idea. So probably, again, back to you, Rachel and Tess, and also Lihua, if I have any idea.
Yeah, I would just say that there isn't, again, there's so many different variables, and there isn't anything that says, you know, a premium has to be a, you know, certain percentage for, you know, private or public. So, you know, I think in both cases, it really depends on, you know, how, you know, what is the value of, you know, what you've done to the strategic, and you can have a very high multiple in a private setting, just as you can have a you know, low multiple in a private setting, and same on the public market, right? So, you know, I think for a lot of companies, once you get to like a certain size, you know, it's hard to say like, oh, for like a $40 billion company, you know, it's unlikely that it has the same percentage multiple that you might, you know, see for a, you know, smaller company. But, you know, for the deals that we're talking about in the, you know, kind of sub $5 billion range, I really don't think that the premium is, you know, tethered to the price of the company as much as it, you know, the price where the company is currently trading or like the last post, as much as it's really tethered to the strategic value of the asset.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. It's just it's really, I think it depends on the different cases and situations and timing, right? So, and also I think maybe it's practically once you have a term sheet, talk to banks like Centerview, and maybe you can bump up the premium with their help. So
fantastic. So 2 more questions, and then we're going to conclude. The second last question is from Lisa Baskin. She is coming from an infrastructure side. I believe she's a real estate investor slash operator. So she's wondering whether they are seeing a lack of a newer lab infrastructure being an issue in any M&A deals, or are they seeing the acquisition of assets being incorporated into existing facilities? We are seeing the need for GMP sites. Are they seeing the same pretty much to the you know, investors and big pharma? Are you seeing when you incorporate a company, their facility kind of merge with your existing one, or you keep them separate?
I don't know that we've ever made a decision to buy or not buy based on the quality of lab space, right? I don't think that moves the needle for us when we think about whether to maintain a site of an acquired company or not. What we're typically thinking about is how do we best retain the talent and ensure continuity of the program. Sometimes we're thinking about a couple of years ago, we bought a company in Oxford in the UK. And for us, part of the value was a strategic footprint in a growing hub there, right, for the biopharma industry and getting access to talent there. Certainly, if you're recruiting a new scientist, they're going to want the shiny toys and the really good-looking space, but that's an investment we can make. We don't expect that out of our target companies. We do expect them to equip their teams, right, to generate the best science possible, but it's not core to our valuation.
All right, last question. Another really trendy topic. Actually, we did a webinar on this, AI. So Jonathan have a question about, you know, many companies claim they are using AI in their drug discovery or design. How do buyers, like you guys, assess the utility of how the company is actually applying AI technology for drug discovery?
can start, and other people can chime in, because our platform technologies team spends a lot of time looking at companies that talk about AI. From our perspective, AI is a tool. It's a tool to discover drugs. It's a tool to accelerate the development of drugs. It's a tool to target the right patients when you're selling drugs. Having a drug that is informed in its discovery and development process by AI is marvelous and wonderful from an intellectual point of view, but what matters is the science that you generate, right? And whether you're generating it, and optimizing or discovering or creating out of AI doesn't matter once you're generating the science that's relevant to our patients.
Yep, and I would just say from an investor standpoint, very similar approach as Rachel. Obviously, it's a great tool. We are certainly very impressed with companies that have been very efficient at moving assets forward, with AI, and to the extent that helps them, get more programs at, with lower spend. That's awesome, and certainly something that makes us gives us confidence in that management team and their ability to execute. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to what are the programs that you are advancing. How does your platform enable you to address areas of unmet need in a better way than the standard of care or competitive pipeline programs? And AI can certainly be a fantastic tool in helping with that.
Fantastic. So AI is a tool, supposedly a nicer tool. That's how we learn today. With that being said, thank you so much, Rachel, Lihua, Tess, and also Dandan, who just left, for the fantastic sharing. Before we close, we also want to give people a little bit, kind of a peek view of what's coming for our BioVerse in the future 3 months. First of all, scan the QR code on the left to follow our InScienceWeTrust community, the Aging Biotech nonprofit, one of the 3 organizers. On the right side, you can see we have quite a few quite interesting topics we're going to cover in the coming 3 months. And also, we are still looking for sponsors. As you can see today, hopefully you were impressed. I certainly got impressed by all the speakers, and you can imagine this is going to be a fantastic platform for your company or for your services to reach literally tens of thousands of audience, a lot of them executive decision makers. So please contact us. This will also help us as a nonprofit to do this better and nicer, and inviting more, I would say, high caliber people like in the audience, like the speaker today, to share their knowledge and wisdoms. With that being said, thank you again, and Rachel, Tess, and Lihua, and also my co-host Nora, for the fantastic webinar today. I learned a ton. Hopefully the audience learned as well. And with that being said, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for the great conversation.